do for everybody in here tonight is to address the number one issue that A, most of you have been asking me about, and B, I know that secretly a lot of you are dealing with, because we have all had interviews and you've all kind of talked to me on Zoom or in person, and I've obviously profiled the shit out of everybody here. So let's talk about this number one issue, which is anxiety. And I would define anxiety as any departure from composure. So we talked about that composure pendulum in a previous installment, a previous flight briefing. And that composure is so important. And I went through a few definitions of it, but there's a professor who talks about behavior at Stanford, and he defines it as an ability to change your internal state from excited to calm. But who here would hear me say the word, that person has a lot of composure, and assume that that is an ability and not a state? So I would be talking about a state of being if I'm talking about composure. And I think true composure is an inherent feeling of calm. So if I talk to anybody, there's somebody in here who just 2 days ago finished Avery programming here at my house and stayed in the guest house. And all of the goals that I see from most people, I want to be more confident, I want to be able to read people better. All of these goals stem from a feeling of safety. And I challenge you to look at your goals and look at your behavioral goals for yourself and find something that if I don't ask you 100 questions about that one goal, because that would do this, and why would that do that, and why, and why, and why, and I kept digging down, if that didn't boil down to safety, then that's a different issue. But I would say a lot of our goals, at the very root cause, if we boiled them down, will wind up with safety on the bottom. So let's talk about this for just a minute. The brain is a pattern-seeking machine. It looks for patterns. It makes predictions. And it makes predictions so it can look for more patterns. And then it finds patterns so it can make better predictions. That's what the brain does. That's kind of all it does. If you look at anything, an emotional chain, learning to behaviorally profile another person, learning any new skill, it's all about, I'm going to pay attention and look for patterns so that I can predict what's going to happen. That's the human brain. Everything in all of neuroscience will boil down to that one little sentence, according to me, anyway. But I think that if we just say safety, we can kind of replace that with comfort, because if we feel completely internally comfortable, so if, one of these states that I want you to try to memorize is feeling at home. So if I'm in a new environment and I can make myself feel at home or remind myself that I'm completely at home here, things start to change. My behavior starts to change right away because I'm comfortable. I am at home. But just think about the things that we hear most from people, what they want out of mastery and what they want out of their lives. If you're a coach, if you're a business coach, or you're a healing type of person, a therapist or something, comfort is the cornerstone and the base of everything else. So we hear people talk about, I want more confidence. I want to be more confident. I want to have more composure in my general interactions with other people. I want to be a better leader. I want more gratitude. I want more enjoyment. I want to feel more motivated. I want to be more dominant, obviously in a positive way. I want to be more mature. I want to have better social skills. Every single one of those boils down to feeling comfortable. All of them. And feeling at home in a situation. We talked about Bill Clinton being able to whoop everybody's ass in persuasion, even though he's not using some secret banned technique. That's because he's comfortable. He's comfortable talking to people. He's at home wherever he goes. And I want you to process this following sentence without trying to write it down immediately, because I'll say it a few times. I want you to take a second to really process this without grabbing a pen. When the body feels safe, the mind feels safe. So with any goal that we're doing, we have to start with physiology. When the body feels safe, it's sending safety signals upward to the brain. Yes, that's a real thing. That's actual science, not metaphysics. It's actually sending safety signals to the brain that says, okay, the body's relaxed, I can relax now. So let's think about this for a second. When the body feels safe, the mind feels safe. So we have to start all of our goals with physiology. And when I'm talking about physiology, I mean tricking your body or forcing your body to send safety signals. I may have mentioned this before, but one of the fastest ways to hack into this is a drug, a prescription medication that is basically harmless called methocarbamol. And it is a non-drowsy muscle relaxer. I think it has a brand name called Robaxin. I want you to just process, of course, talk to your doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice, psychological advice, or anything like that. But what this drug does, the first thing I see when I see a person that has anxiety or fear problems, their shoulders are moving upward during the conversation. They're not relaxed. So, and then their arms start moving into their torso. If I get closer to the camera as we're speaking to each other, if I start leaning in towards that person, their arms move into their body. Everything that's going on is A, muscular tension, and B, the body protecting arteries. So there's under our arms, there's a brachial artery. In our neck, we have the carotid artery. So anytime we experience fear, the body automatically begins protecting arteries and tightening muscles. We're harder to hit. We're harder for a tiger's teeth to puncture if there's muscular tension. Methocarbamol, being a muscle relaxer, stops all of the body fear signals, or not all the way stops them, but very strongly puts the mute button on them, turns the volume down on all of that. So methocarbamol, you have to get it from a doctor, so obviously you would have to talk to a doctor first. But that's not the only problem. If you consider the heart is also a muscle, and methocarbamol kind of works on the heart. And please keep in mind, I'm going to wrap this up in a minute to where you're not going to, like, I'm not saying take this for the rest of your life. To slow the heart down, I would recommend a beta blocker drug, also prescribed by a physician, very, very safe, and very commonly prescribed for stage fright. But it's most often taken by people with heart disease, high blood pressure, any kind of heart problems. It's a beta blocker, which means it lowers blood pressure and it lowers your heart rate. And that's metoprolol is probably the number one I would recommend. If you want a quick acting for single use scenarios, I would do a 50 milligram tablet. And if you want it to spend it a whole day to figure out what that was like, it would be a 100 milligram ER or extended release tablet. Another beta blocker that's similar to metoprolol, which is more commonly seen in Europe, is propranolol. Does pretty much the same things, is more likely to have headaches as a side effect. So if we take methocarbamol and or metoprolol for a period of time, the body and brain are learning that these situations are no longer dangerous. And the reason that these two are powerful to do this is that the brain is making its own decisions without a psychoactive drug like a serotonin reuptake inhibitor or something that deliberately jerks around with your brain chemicals. Because an SSRI doesn't fix anything, it treats something. It's not a cure, it's a treatment. You have to take SSRIs for the rest of your life. A beta blocker can basically, and the methocarbamol can lower the muscles and lower muscular tension over a period of time that's going to increase your feeling of confidence, safety, and comfort. It's tricking your body into sending those signals to the brain. The next one is Claritin, which is an allergy medication. There are 18 known studies in the last 10 years alone that allergies trigger, and even allergies you don't know about it, can trigger forms of anxiety. Obviously, that would be something you'd need to go see a provider for. That could change your entire effing life. So I would say that it's probably worth it. Next in my little mental list here is KT tape, which we talked about the other day. It's a little cylinder of tape that you can buy to trick your muscles or to remind yourself. If my shoulders go up, if I want to tape my shoulder down to my lower abdomen here, the moment I raise my shoulder, I might just make it yank my nipple upward. So it's uncomfortable. So my shoulders move up, and that feels weird to have your nipples get pulled in the middle of the day. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do it another way to where it reminds me, and I have some kind of physiological reminder to put my shoulders back down. That's what KT tape can do for you. So this one's kind of weird, but it's called Zofran, Zofran. You're probably familiar with the name. Most people, I think, are familiar with the name. It is an anti-emetic, is the medical name, but we normal humans just say anti-nausea medication. It stops nausea from happening. It's a dissolve under the tongue smartly, because if you are extremely nauseous, swallowing pills is not a good idea. Most antiemetics are either dissolved under the tongue, a nasal spray, or you put it up your butthole. That's kind of the only 3 ways to do it. So Zofran and some other ones, this is just the brand or name that I'm familiar with, is an antagonist to serotonin. So it antagonizes serotonin receptor sites. The caution I would give you here from a person who's a neuroscientist is that not all brains will translate this the same way. So for some people, it could spike your anxiety. Some people, it'll drop it to the floor. It's been proven effective, and no one knows why, to treat bipolar disorders, mood disorders, and GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. So it's pretty badass. Definitely worth looking into. But the one thing that all of these things have in common is that they are non-psychoactive. So just pretend for a moment that I use those things. I have anxiety, or I have a little bit of a lack of confidence, which translates to a lack of safety or a lack of dominance. So we know that the 5 authority traits, confidence, discipline, leadership, gratitude, and enjoyment, it's hard to feel all 5 of those unless we feel safe first. Number 1, you can take it from me as a neuroscientist. I've been researching this. Or number 2, you could just look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have to feel safe. So we don't want to do social belonging if we're not feeling safe on the pyramid. So we're tricking the brain for the safety thing down here. So over the course of a month, I go order a Starbucks. I go to a job interview. I go talk to a girl. I go do something that puts me outside of my comfort zone, and holy shit, my heart's not pounding, my shoulders aren't tense, my body's not tightening up and protecting its arteries. I'm training those neurons to say, oh, these are the neurons that said I need to freak out when that shit happens. And they say, oh, we're not triggering anymore. And they get a divorce. Those neurons get a divorce, and they start moving away from each other. So over the course of just a couple of weeks with these medications, and this is my findings and my theory, I'll call it a theory, but I've seen it work on a lot of people. It's very powerful because none of these things are psychoactive. None of these things are, your brain is not dependent on chemicals from these drugs to create this feeling. So that means in the absence of the drug, the neurons are still rewired to the way they were before. I think that is a profoundly different thing than taking something like Valium or lithium or like a barbiturate or something to calm you down, or like a Xanax. Xanax does nothing for your future self. In the moment, it's fantastic. Even if you're having a bad trip on acid or another psychedelic drug, one Xanax can knock you out of it. Like a home run hit out of a baseball park, you're out of the trip. and Xanax will pull you out. But it does nothing for your future. It does nothing to help neurons connect to each other. It's just an in-the-moment Band-Aid for what's going on. So let's talk about really quick the composed leader. I'm going to give you a 5-word phrase that I'd like you to memorize here in just a second, because this is what I've seen in studying these people my entire freaking life, that this is the way they view the world. So when a spike in drama or conflict or stress comes up for these people who are natural leaders, they're naturally confident and dominant in their conversations, composure automatically starts coming in. It's not like this comes up and that they have to remind themselves. Granted, in the beginning, we're all going to have to do that. You will have to do that. But composure becomes, over time, an automatic response to things, because they tend to not actually think these 5 words, but they tend to view the stress situation through the lens of these 5 words. And these 5 words are, this is part of life. So something happens to me, my car gets broken into, something gets yanked out of my car, the airlines lose my luggage. That's how they view the situation from the beginning. The people who are successful in speaking to people, or successful leaders, they view it as, this is just a normal part of life. Yep, Phil got it. But that is not something they have to pull out a note card out of their pocket and look at it to like, oh my God, I'm freaking out, I need to calm down. They're not conscious that they do that. So this is me, like a total douchebag, sitting with these people who are good leaders saying like, okay, all right, so your car catches on fire in your driveway and it burns part of your garage down. What's going to happen now? Like, how are you reacting to this? So this is me asking these like thousands of super awkward, weird questions to these people over a long period of time to distill that down into just 5 words, because that's how they all see the world. They don't all use those 5 words. They describe it in different ways, but it all comes from that one very precise thought process, not just the words, but the thought process of everything that's going on. This is just a part of life. The second thing I've noticed is that all of these people feel comfortable because they know that they have clear boundaries in every single aspect of their life. And they know that when these boundaries are violated, they can set the boundary without being an asshole or a douchebag right away. And they can be very kind and very composed about setting a boundary. And yes, I get it. I carry a Glock every day of my life. And sometimes I hope I never have to, but a boundary needs to be set with a gun. But hopefully never. Every other time, I'm totally fine acting like the biggest idiot in the room just to stop extreme violence from happening. But otherwise, these boundaries can be set very strongly and very clearly right at the beginning, the first time something happens, not the 5th or the 17th or the 9,000th. The first time something happens, very polite setting of boundaries. And this even applies to like your boss at work. It doesn't mean being an ass. It just means behaving or not behaving like a person owns you. Know where your boundaries are. Know where your boundaries are. It's worth drawing a little circle or doing something on a piece of paper to where I have a clear-cut thing. I've actually processed it consciously. And if boundaries and beliefs and all of this are so vital to our lives, why do we spend 1,000 times more drawing out the price we're going to pay for a car, taking a pencil to paper to figure out how I'm going to design my living room or what couch pillows I'm going to put in the living room? So everything is a little bit skewed for us, that we're used to just letting this happen on accident. But all we're doing is making it happen on purpose, bringing this into our lives on purpose. So how will you, in the future, without an ego, set a very firm boundary? And the second part of that question is, how will you do it instantly when it happens, when something happens? And that's worth rehearsing. a few times, if not a few hundred times. So number 3, and this one I think is vitally important, maybe above all else, but I think the first one's pretty good because it keeps us in composure, knowing and understanding this is just part of life. Number 3, and this is performance versus connection mode of interaction. If you read the DSM, which is a dry piece of crap document, if you don't know what the DSM is, it looks like this. And there's a bunch of tabs in here, depending on which book you get, where you can flip to mental disorders and diagnose a mental disorder. This is the most current one. But if you flip to generalized anxiety disorder, which I don't know where it is, so I'm not going to waste your time. So the primary thing in the DSM for all anxiety disorders, every single one of them, number one thing to start diagnosing that disorder as a psychiatrist is a fear of evaluation. That's exactly how they word it. Those are the exact words in the DSM, fear of evaluation. And I always was fascinated with that because even since the DSM-2, the second one that came out, and people like discredit this book all the time, but it's literally written by like thousands of psychiatrists and doctors who are way smarter than me. And they kind of vote this stuff up and they kind of have a consensus on this. There's no real science in psychology. It's sad to say, but this is as close as we can get. There's no mathematical numbers that equal schizophrenia. You can't just do a trigonometry function and say, oh yeah, you're bipolar. So it's not like getting a blood test. So this is the closest we got. Let's go back to fear of evaluation though. The fear of evaluation, it specifically means a fear of being evaluated by other people. And I experienced this the first time, like our little behavior panel YouTube show hit like 10,000 followers. I had so much fun until like we started recording an episode. And then right before we started filming, I was like, shit, it's like people are commenting on my shirt. They're commenting on my facial hair. And like, it was exhausting. But it happened for one episode. And I didn't realize what was happening then, but it was a fear of evaluation. But let's look at these two different ways of having a conversation with a person. One is a performance and one's a connection. So talking to people should never feel like a performance to you. And I know that it does for many of you. I know that for a fact. You don't have to nod your head. You can blink twice. I got you. All right. But let's talk about the people who view it as a performance, which I spent most of my life doing. In performance mode, we get into this mode of I'm in a conversation with a person and I need to perform because I'm fearing being evaluated. Number one, you're tense or the person feels pressured to behave a certain way, even if there's no pressure whatsoever placed on them. Number two, they're observing themselves in the conversation. And what I would call, they're living behind their eyes. So they're spending time behind their eyes in conversations. I just went to a hypnosis convention a few weeks ago, and it was in Las Vegas. I'm telling you, at least 65% of the men there were on the spectrum. And it was almost as if they had learned hypnosis, like this is how I'm going to figure out human beings. But everyone you talk to at the hypnosis convention had these feelings of, I need to perform, I'm being observed, I need to act a certain way. And the one thing I saw in common with everybody there is that there's little feeling of connection because they're not in connection mode, they're in performance mode. And people who live this way tend to like have a conversation with a person and then afterwards they'll find themselves analyzing the event. There's definitely, I just had a call with a really, really mean as a snake lawyer. His clients hired me on as a trial consultant and they're like, this guy's a total dickhead. He hates trial consultants. and they were on the Skype with him or the Zoom with him 30 minutes before I was supposed to be on. Little did I know this. And he's all telling them like he doesn't know New York state law. He doesn't know the entire jury selection process. He doesn't know the law. And that's right, because psychology wins most cases and not the law. But I get into the Zoom call, and he's real standoffish for about 45 seconds. And within the 15 minutes, he kicks the other two people off the phone so he can tell me about how he loves neuroscience and how he's been talking about it and ask me a bunch of questions. And then he wants to get my phone number so we can chat on the weekends and have cocktails about neuroscience. But all I did there was a little bit of needs profiling and elicitation. So I'm basically using if you're new in mastery, you'll get to this soon, but I use something called informational altruism. And number one thing, he was expecting me to come in like him, because most human beings expect other people to be just like them. So that's the number one mistake of all salespeople in the world, is selling to themselves and not the customer. So we tend to think everyone's just like me. So I get it right in the call and talk about how insecure I am, talking to attorneys, and how insecure I've just got out of the military. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And right away, he's like, oh, no. So he starts correcting me, and it was great. And he went from performance to connection, and I was in connection the entire time. So I think it makes a big difference. And we'll definitely get to the rest of that stuff in a bit, or in a few weeks. But the biggest thing that I want you to take away from the performance mindset is the focus is on the self. Focus is on self. So we're behind the eyes. So we could call these two behind the eyes and in front of the eyes. So let's talk about what connection mode feels like and what's the evidence that we see when a person's in the mode of connection. The focus is on the other person, number one. And it doesn't feel like a performance. It feels like you guessed it, a connection. And we're feeling good about the event, but there's a caveat here. They say, oh, that was a great conversation. They feel good about the event without having to recall specific details. They don't need to go relive everything to say, okay, I've ticked all these boxes. Yes, I should feel good about that. Yes, now I can feel good. They feel good about the event or the conversation without having to recall specific details. So next is just feeling relaxed and comfortable. Exactly what we've been talking about, feeling at home. At home. Next is they're genuinely curious about the other person. And finally, maybe most importantly, they're comfortable sharing their own depth of emotion. Because if I'm in performance mode, I have to manage everything that comes out. If I'm not in performance mode, I can just say what I'm feeling. And I don't have to be fake. The first time I started reading body language, I was like 20 years old, trying to approach girls in bars and stuff. Man, I wish I had videotape of it. I would show you guys. It's a board certified douchebag. And I felt like the more I learned about body language, the more I felt like I had to manage, because I would say, oh shit, my thumb is in my pocket. It should be hanging out, or my feet need to be pointed a certain way. And then once I just stopped caring, things got so much more peaceful. That was a good year and a half, that whole process. But here's how to do it. Here's a quick way that I've learned to do it, that I've taught other people to do it, and it almost works instantaneously. So I want you to view your attention and focus in every conversation as if you were holding a camera. So the camera can be in 3, maybe 4 places. It could be in your head, in front of your head, looking at the other person, so you're a little bit out of your eyes. It could be in third person, which is where it should be most of the time. So you're watching the entire interaction, like if the camera's moved out and filming the whole conversation. This helps you literally force your consciousness outside of your head. And finally, the camera can be inside the other person's head, focused on them. So that does force you. It helps you to see the whole situation with a little more clarity. How the body language is being reactive or non-reactive, how the body language is opening or closing, which is typically, even with all my years of study, that's kind of all I look for in conversations. Is it opening or closing? So a lot of you, any of you going through this, and especially if you're already confident and you're trying to be more confident, it's a process that can create nervousness pretty easily. And that's very, of course, it's understandable. But I want you to try to think of all of the times that a reporter asks athletes or Olympic competitors the same question of, like, were you nervous? Are you nervous going out there? Or were you nervous before you went out there? It's a common question. And 99 times out of 100, they say no, not at all. But what are the symptoms of being nervous? Increased heart rate, anticipation, a higher level of expectancy, and scanning what's going on very sharply. That's identical. If you were really excited about something and explained being excited, you would explain the same physiological symptoms. They view that nervousness as something different than us. It's the same exact response, and they just feel excited. They say that they're excited. And if you try this for 3 days, or just for a few days, I promise you, you'll get addicted to it because it works instantaneously. Of just redefining how you're feeling, that nervousness equals excitement. It's just on the viewpoint. So it has the same physiology. And when there's pressure, people, and this is proven by Harvard, this is Stanford, and there's a really good book about this. I'm going to recommend the book to you, but right now I'm going to give you the key points from the book. These are the key takeaways as if you kind of read the whole thing. And the book is called Performing Under Pressure. And the authors are Henry Wessinger and someone Fry, F-R-Y. And they talk about this research in this book at length, but Harvard found that pressure decreases work and the quality of somebody's performance. And when a person gets nervous before a performance, our brains and our friends, think about this, our brains and our friends will tell us to calm down. So now we're in a combative position before something happens because we're trying to control a 6 million year old animal inside your head. So now we're trying to force ourselves to calm down because we're seeing the situation as undesired. If I'm about to talk to a person, my heart rate may need to be up. That's fine. So now, as we're trying to calm down and it's not working, we experience this heart rate as a failure. So before we walk into the conversation, we're already check mark number 1, we've failed once because we didn't calm down when our brain wanted us to calm down. So students who were told to get excited in these experiments, they scored higher on every single test, athletic or academic. They performed better and they crushed their tasks versus the students who were told just to calm down before something happened, a test or an experiment took place. So, told to get excited, just suggested that they get excited before something happens, dramatically alters the outcome versus the words calm down. So telling yourself I'm excited from a brain chemical perspective literally manufactures more adrenaline than noradrenaline. So your blood vessels are dilating, your lungs are expanding. And if you think of like an MAOI inhibitor, which is illegal in a lot of sports, right? Because it does those two things. You're injecting yourself with performance-enhancing drugs just by saying, I want to get excited about this event. That's exactly what happens in your body. So you have more adrenaline than noradrenaline. Next from this book, I think it's from the same book, is compare exactly what you need to accomplish with something that you're familiar with and that's less scary. This sounds a little basic. What we're doing here is, let's say you have to write a book and you've got 6 months to do it. You can say, hey, I write blog posts, I write emails all the time. This is just like writing a few emails a day. And that's it. So I have to go talk to this elite executive VIP, and the guy's worth like 10 million. It's a big contract. It's just, I've had lots of conversations with people that were really nice. It's just like that. So deliberately making a choice to compare it. And this is what these natural leaders do, these natural salespeople do. They typically just do this automatically without someone telling them to. They just accidentally grew up with this character trait. And finally, fixate on all the factors within your control. Fixate on what's in your control. Which also, as a corollary to that, would mean ignoring all the other shit because you're not going to do anything about it. So those three concepts rolled up into like one paragraph would sound like I'm excited to blank because it's just like when I blank, and I have a lot that I'm in control of. For instance, blank, blank, and blank. That's exactly what that process would sound like. And that redirects our neurology. So let's just really quickly brush over the art of worrying about shit. And some people are masterful at it. So proven by science, the first technique I'm going to give you is proven to eliminate about 90% of your worry. The second technique I will give you is proven to eliminate just about the other 10%. And the third thing I'm going to give you will theoretically keep it from ever returning if you continue to use these three things. So number one, the first technique is writing out 2 questions. So the 2 questions. Number one, what am I worried about? I'm worried that when I go talk to the sales guy tomorrow, I'm going to be a complete and utter failure because my armpits sweat a whole bunch and I'm going to be really nervous, and all I have left from the dry cleaners are light colored shirts. Okay. Question number 2 that I would need to write out after what I'm worried about is, what can I do about it? So I know I'm worried about this, this, and this, and here are all the steps I can take before that happens to mitigate all of that thing from happening. So the science shows us that worries, our feeling of being worried about something, is cut in half when a decision is made about what to do. And it's just about cut in half again when the action is taken on those things. Those second things, like what can I do about it? The moment you start taking action on that second question, the worry is reduced by another 40%. You get a 50% reduction in identifying exactly what you want to do and deciding to do it, and another 40% reduction in worry by taking action on exactly what that question is. So let's go to the number 2 here. That will eliminate the final 10%. So this one's pretty basic, and please don't let that get lost because it's kind of basic. Because a lot of us say, oh yeah, but then you'll never do it. So let's not dismiss it offhand. Let's talk about a guy. His name's Willis Carrier. You may know his name because he invented the first commercial air conditioner, electric air conditioner. And this guy worked as an engineer. And this is before he started his company. And he basically installed a bunch of equipment at gas plants. And one time one of his projects went bad and he was consumed with worry, and it kept him up. He lost sleep, and everything started going downhill just because he was worried about this project going bad. So he imagined ahead of time, he's rehearsing the day that it failed and losing his job. So he's imagining a worst case scenario. But then he chose to imagine, like, well, what can I do about it? So the day after he lost his job, he's still alive and he can still go find another one. So what they're saying, and this has been researched at Johns Hopkins actually, what they're saying is accepting the worst outcome pulls us out of the clouds, because the outcomes are always like thousands of things could happen until you start thinking about it deliberately. So it pulls us out of the clouds. So we'll make a list of things that I need to do today. At the end of the day, what if nothing got done at all? I'm just giving you an example. Okay, it's 5 p.m., nothing got done. How would I fix it? And now I'm saying, what can I do about it? I'm taking time to analyze the worry, what I'm worried about, and what I can do about it. Once I figure that out, nothing else is in my control. So number 3, preventing it from happening again, is to live in day-tight compartments. Day-tight. Like airtight or watertight. These are day-tight. So back in the day, and continuing to this day, the captain or the guy who engineered or built the Titanic said it was unsinkable. It was 100% unsinkable. I guarantee you it was an unsinkable ship. But it was only unsinkable when all the doors were shut. Because every compartment, every room, every tiny bathroom, every bedroom, every hallway could seal itself off and become completely watertight. So no matter how big of a hole got put in the ship, if the doors were shut, it's watertight. So those compartments, that's kind of how they were, that's how they were designed on the old ships. And that really does make them unsinkable. Like I was the navigation officer on a guided missile destroyer. It's a 500-foot long ship. It's 70 feet wide. It's a big boat. But every single compartment in there has these watertight doors. And it makes it unsinkable, virtually unsinkable. So to activate these doors, we're going to wake up each day living a completely new life. Which kind of goes back to what we're talking about with discipline. If I take care of today, tomorrow's going to take care of itself. So concentrate all of your effort in today's compartment. This compartment. I'm in a day-tight compartment. And you can sleep knowing that you did your best. And what about the compartments back behind you? They're already full. They're full of water. There's nothing you can do. You can't fix any of it. And that's a lot of our worry comes from going back to those old compartments behind us. So all of this, everything that I'm teaching and discussing here, I have been through myself. But the one thing I've discovered here is any self-improvement, anything that we're doing to level up our authority, our confidence, our discipline, our leadership, whatever it is, all self-improvement that works is just we're figuring out ways to trick an animal. We're figuring out ways to trick the mammalian brain who thinks it's trying to protect us, who thinks it's going to identify things that can hurt us by worrying a whole lot or being fearful or being scared. So like if I talk about meditation, I won't speak about it in some mystical terminology. It's a way to control an animal. It's putting an animal in timeout until it learns to obey. And that's all it is. Cesar Millan talks about this with dog training. And we've got pretty much the same brain in our heads. So we're just kind of smarter animals. And I think the methods that make us grow and improve are the ones that allow us to influence other people, are just ways to convince an animal to behave differently. We're guiding an animal. I haven't done any research on shock collar effectiveness in humans. I was in Hamburg and I saw some clubs there where that's probably going on. So if you've been really doing the homework for the past couple of weeks, you are now at the level where you can identify scripts that people are running. And hopefully you've come to realize that everyone you see is running some kind of script. And hopefully you're able to say the words, I can also predict what their script probably says. That should be where you are this week. Since we talked about this and we spent a week identifying people's scripts, if you haven't done that, I can see your face. If you have not done that, you need to be doing that this week. Every conversation, what script is that person running and what would break that script? And we talked about small talk. You should be able to by now make someone feel how you want them to feel, make someone feel like they're connected. You should be able to say, I have started to identify what kind of story somebody is living, and we'll get it more into that next week. The power of story, and I'm not going to teach you really how to tell stories. You can just go on YouTube for that. But I'm going to teach you how to hijack the story that a person is living in at that moment, and then make them feel like the hero, and then make what you want them to do feel like the next step in the hero's journey. That was a really long sentence if somebody was typing all that out. But hopefully you now understand, based on everything we've talked about, that no one makes a snap decision, ever. So the more initial conditions I create for the outcome, the more likely the outcome is. Initial conditions. Anyone heard of the butterfly effect? It was never called the butterfly effect until like way, way after. And the guy who published it was laughed out of the room and basically denied a PhD. And that was his doctoral thesis. The original name of the butterfly effect, and I think I have this right, is the law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions. But I think that's everything. If we look at a police officer who was involved in a shooting, who probably maybe should not have pulled the trigger in that scenario, we also have to look at what was going on. He's going through a divorce, and one of his kids is getting bullied at school, and he just found out the day before. But we also have to look at his glucose levels, because he had a whole lot of crap that day for lunch, and he had a ton of sugar. And we also have to look at how his parents raised him, and whether or not he was bullied in school, and whether or not something triggered something that reminded him of a bully in school. So there's so many conditions. So the more initial conditions are present, the more a final behavior can be determined. And what we're doing in our conversations when we're talking about people, we're talking about stories, we're understanding what script that person is running, and we're manufacturing initial conditions. So everything we're doing when we're talking about priming, and we're not all the way into priming yet. There's 4 different classes we're going to have on priming, which are increasing levels of complexity. Understanding that the more initial conditions that I create, the more likely the outcome I want is. So from the very beginning of the conversation, I'm starting to prime that person with the manufacture of initial conditions. Okay. And priming is very important. So now you hopefully understand that novelty and authority are the fastest way to compliance. Period. I will go toe-to-toe with any human being that ever lived and argue that point. I have never in my life seen anything more effective. There's no technique. There's no secret hypnosis technique or NLP technique or anything on planet Earth more powerful than authority and novelty. Period. And I will stake my career on that. I say this because we tend to want the techniques really bad, because it's kind of like the junk food. I'm going to go to the grocery store with all the intention of getting veggies and some kale and carrots and tomatoes. But then when I get to the checkout counter, the only thing I was really interested in were the Doritos. But I'm telling you, the powerful stuff is in authority and novelty. And once you have authority and novelty, your skills, which comes into our social skills and all the other stuff, to level up the 6-axis model has to be leveled up too. And at this time, if you are having problems with making small talk, I need you to reach out to me. We may need to have another workshop in the middle of the week, or put a video together on how to do this, or I will put on a body cam and go do it so you can see how it works. If this is an issue, then this is a huge hurdle. So if you're having problems making small talk or making someone feel interesting, which is the secret to all small talk, is just making another person feel interesting, I need to know. You don't have to say it out here out loud, but I need to know about it. You need to let me know in an email, because I want you to cross the finish line at the end of this year, not just kind of go through the motions. So when we're talking about small talk, one of the most important things most important advice I could ever give you is making admissions and being very open and honest about your own shit that's going on for you. No one is attracted to perfect people. We don't like them in books. We don't like them in movies. We don't even like them in real life. Nobody would like Superman. He would be the boringest character in the world until kryptonite gets introduced into the story. So, all right, let's go into confidence really quick. Hopefully, you've drastically increased the awareness of yourself. And you've drastically increased over the past few weeks. So like it's growing over the last few weeks. If you're doing the homework, it should be growing. And if that's not happening, or you need some guidance to help you with a course change, I need to know about that. Hopefully everyone's leveling up their discipline as well. We've talked about this. And these are super basic things. I want you to go through and go back to the scripts. I want to go back to identifying every single person. I'm going to go through and figure out what script they're running. What does that script say? So the person at a checkout stand, the moment they say hello, the next thing on their script is to start scanning stuff. The next thing on their script may be to make some small talk. I'm going to predict what their script is going to say. It seems benign, it seems ridiculous, but I want your brain to start stretching in the direction of predicting behavior. Even though this seems pretty simple and easy to do, the exercise is worth it. You're teaching your brain, just like when you buy a new car and you see it all over the place, you're telling your brain that that's important. So what we're doing by these exercises is telling the brain that shit's important to us. All right, so make a detailed list from the past few weeks. What needs to be done this week for you? And one of the reasons I do this on Sundays is because I spend my Sunday evenings with a piece of paper planning out the following week. So what do I need to do for you, for a behavioral perspective? What do I need to be doing this week? Do I need to be looking at story, structure, scripts, authority, confidence, discipline? Do I need to go back and actually do the tracker, the personal tracker that Chase told me to do that I actually didn't even download or print out yet? Let's do that this week. So next week, we're starting our big envelope of behavioral skills that is going to start with this story structure. And when I'm talking about story structure, I will tell you right now, hands down, that's why I win cases. I have never in my lifetime lost a court case for any of my clients, not once. And the whole reason that I win those cases is because of what we're going to be talking about next week, and that's story structure. And it sounds so stupid. We're talking about plot and character and the 3-act structure and the hero's journey and all this other crap. That's why I win cases. And it's also one of the most powerful persuasion tools, which we're getting into next week. But to get in there next week, I want you to have the foundation laid. So spend this week in the homework doing these exercises. I'm actually looking at a human. I'm seeing that there's a brain in their head. That 3-pound sack of meat is all there is. I'm not influencing that whole person. I'm influencing a 3-pound sack of meat in their head. I'm seeing script. I'm seeing structure. I'm seeing everything that's going on with this person that we've covered so far. Once that homework groundwork is laid, and that's the only reason I'm urging you to do that this week. I'm ordering you to do that this week, because next week you're going to need that, and it's going to be vitally important for you to have those little neurons kind of start dating each other. They're not married yet, but they're definitely doing it. They're getting close. They're sleeping together. So get those neurons in bed together this week for all of those things, please.